Hello my friends, we have some interesting update for today. We're gonna review the front lines and the situation as you may see on your screens. Yes, those are the Russian armored vehicles, plus some of the great kaboom news are coming from Russia, but also in this video I'm gonna tell you about not so good news from the Pokrovsk direction, and not only, because on this channel I just tell truths. But at first let's start from this one and let me show you the broader picture. It is like that, couple of the Russian BMPs, one as you can see on flames, and this is the China-made golf cart. China supplied more than 2,000 of those vehicles to Russia. As we see, Russia tries to propel forward, but nothing is happening with these tactics. Then they use some of the vehicles. 2, 3, 9 doesn't really matter for Ukrainian drone operators. Well, this particular attack, I wouldn't call it even an attack because Russians were not capable to reach Ukrainian positions, but this advancement of the Russian vehicles happened in Novoyelizavetovka, Donetsk Oblast, also not far away from Pokrovsk. Let me show you. So this is Pokrovsk and Novoyelizavetovka is located over here. The convoy was kaputted somewhere in those field roads here on the north. As you might see, it's red, it's the Russian controlled territory, but even here Russians are unable to put their vehicles close to the front lines, not even telling about reaching Ukrainian positions. It means that Ukraine was capable to create the kill zone for at least 10 or maybe even 15 kilometers away from their own positions. And yes, for this one Ukraine used some of the FPV drones. The 59th Ukrainian Brigade did the job and it is 10 out of 10. No losses, nothing, just causing losses for the Russian side. Fantastic. Also, there is the new video from the Konstantinovka direction. Russia tries to move their vehicles probably. This is the artillery system. You can see the barrel is here, and the Russians tried to tow this one. Well, they were kaputted. Also, they sent some of the BMPs on the roads and supply vehicles. All of that was met with, oh yeah, a couple of the motorcyclists. That's just the compilation of the Ukrainian Phoenix drone unit operation, and they operate with the help of the Spilnota Sternenko. So Sternenko, he's the biggest Ukrainian drone volunteer. He supplies drones to this unit. So the only tactics that still works for the Russian army is advancing with infiltration forces. Small groups, they just leak through Ukrainian defense, which is not consistent on the front lines, and I would say that the situation in Pokrovsk is not good for now, because Russians managed to get into the main train station yesterday. And there they even commenced the war crimes against civilians. I cannot show you this video fully, but they went to the main train station building and started to shoot everyone around. Unfortunately, there were some of the locals who still stayed in Pokrovsk, which is absolutely not good. So locals, I think they should evacuate from those kind of the places like Pokrovsk and not staying there. Ukraine cannot enforce them forcibly to leave their homes, that's why some people still stay there. But 90–95% as usual they evacuate. Judging on a drone image, at least one woman and 2 men lost their lives right on the rails because they were trying to cross from one part of the town to another one, and one woman was wounded. Well, later on Ukraine kaputted the building with the Russian soldiers inside, so you may say that there was some sort of the revenge. Yes, it was, but rest of the Russians, they're still out there on the front lines, and they do absolutely the same war crimes as those Russian soldiers who were kaputted. Well, the woman who was wounded, she was taken by some of the local guys somewhere, we don't know where. Our volunteer call sign Galandit, so Dutch, who is doing some of the evacuations from the front lines, and he also said that evacuation of that wounded woman is not possible because it is simply very dangerous to send any sort of the vehicles to Pokrovsk. That's why it's important for locals to evacuate from those hotspots which are at the edge of the front lines. So I don't know what might happen to that woman plus other civilians, because the presence of the Ukrainian armed forces in Pokrovsk, it is very limited. There's still some of the basements, blocks, buildings where Ukrainian infantry could be located, but it's absolutely not too much, and from one side it is good, because for example defending Bakhmut was a mistake done by Ukrainian Army Command. In Bakhmut, Ukraine had the most of the losses, probably only comparable to the summer counteroffensive of 2023. Ukraine learns on its own mistakes, and that's why Pokrovsk is just partially controlled for now. I would say that that entire settlement is located in a gray zone. And according to my information, based on the pictures coming from the Russian drones, because I monitor Russian publics and Russian Telegram groups as well, so there was the video showing Ukrainian soldiers, 2 of them, surrendered to the Russian drones. You may find it also on Twitter because it was reposted by some of the journalists, and it happened here in the central area of Pokrovsk. But now the situation is different because the Russian sabotage group was captured in the terminal building of the train station. Well, nevertheless, I don't think that Ukraine will be capable to control Pokrovsk for extensive period of time. Russian army is very close, they already entered the urban territory and they're very close to the multi-story buildings, and they continue to act with the small forces, 1, 2, 3 soldiers maximum. But that's how they move along the streets, and it's definitely hard to find where they are. Urban fights already in progress, and today I listened to Sternenko, Ukrainian volunteer. He has his YouTube channel, and he says that definitely situation is beyond difficult in Pokrovsk. This Russian tactics actually works, and the only hope I have just for this Lentovichi village where Ukraine tries to counterattack, and that is how maybe the supply line could be cut, but it depends on the Ukrainian command and the risk of this operation. But Ukrainian presence is out there. So Ukraine is successful in the Dobropilya direction, but here in Pokrovsk, the situation is not good. Well, the Deep State military map update today gives us just the Russian army movement in towards direction. Russian army expanded the territorial gains, so yesterday, today, they're really getting closer to Konstantinivka using the same tactics. Also, not good update is coming from Kupiansk, where Russian army is confirmed to be presented in the central part of the settlement. So yesterday and today we have this update. This is entirely the gray area, but red area means that Russia acts more or less freely with main forces. As for Pokrovsk, Deep State gave us the updates 3 days ago, this Russian movement. So in general, Ukraine is successful in hitting the Russian vehicles, Russian convoys, but still it is very hard to control those small sabotage groups of the Russian army, and that's how Russians manage to propel. But using this kind of the tactics, Russians might move only very slowly. And now to the good news. We have this report from Novokubashevsk refinery in Saratov, Russia. As you may see, it is on fire again, and I think it's already 7th strike on this refinery facility. It is very, very big, one of the biggest refineries out there in Russia. And it looks like yesterday the strike was definitely a successful one. Putin says that they tried to resolve the problem with Russian gasoline and production of the Russian fuel, but so far the situation for Russia, because of the Ukrainian drone sanctions, is getting worse and worse. 85% of the Russian regions are now being affected by the fuel shortage, and the total loss of the Russian refinery capabilities is roughly 40%. Also in Orenburg, Ukraine hit one of the main gas facilities of that Russian region. This is the gas processing facility. Without it, Russia cannot continue its export to the southern route. As you might see on this picture, Russians are definitely concerned about the safety of this enterprise. They put some of the cages to secure the most sensitive equipment. And it's very far away from Ukraine, I think roughly 1,000 kilometers, maybe even more. Well, Ukraine started to target Russian gas facilities because Russia does the same stuff, hitting Ukrainian gas enterprises as well. That's why this winter could be really hard for Ukraine, probably the hardest since the beginning of the war. Even nowadays there are some of the blackouts, including the capital city of Kyiv, because of the shortage of energy. And what we have here is the Ukrainian primary drone unit. They hit some of the radar. I can see Russians probably tried to mask it, but it didn't happen. So there was the drone strike. How successful it was? Well, probably this building with radar was damaged. It is called a wild-eye radar, and probably it's stationary one. Sometimes Ukrainian army is using those ultralight airplanes, converting them into drones to operate behind the front lines. And this is FAB 100 aviation bomb with some of the mortar mines. The payload is placed underneath the airplane. This is the gimbal to control maybe the flight path, and that's how it flies. Take off, our guys behind filming, and drone flies to the Russian territory. Sometimes could be very effective, by the way, it's made in Ukraine. Ukraine is using more and more of the ground drone systems on the front lines and also for supplies. Well, Russia also started to introduce their ground drone platforms, but not as massively as Ukraine. Yeah, this video I found in the 3rd Army Corps. They show the drone operation, even for assault missions, you saw, yeah? For evacuation for supplies elsewhere, there are multiple of the ground drone platforms. Combat drones, engineering drones, kamikaze drones, all kind of the stuff. And that might actually minimize the Ukrainian army losses. I see it as the next step in this war and in the future wars that ground drones will be presented absolutely elsewhere. They'll be used as the platforms for the drone launchers, for everything. And Ukraine here is one step ahead of Russia. Well, Russia has the resource, it has ally like China. China has the resources and technologies, and they may produce those drones absolutely massively. And I think that China might supply those drones to Russia like they did with the China-made golf cart. So this is must-have for the future army, or even for the current army, but for Ukraine it is more critical because with this stuff Ukraine may have less losses and Ukraine has less army men compared to Russian side. So it's very, very crucial, and I'm very happy that the 3rd Army Corps has those kind of the systems and continue to develop those. And this is the situation on the front lines. Those are the Russian soldiers. You can see after the rain it's very hard for them to move, even on enduro motorcycles. Everything is dirty. And that's the new modification of the Russian hangar tank. Well, kind of the interesting Kalashnikov this guy has with a very big magazine, and the color is interesting. Well, actually this tank with that kind of the protection, it looks finished. I think that nowadays the main tank producers should be focused on those kind of the constructions to protect their fancy looking tanks. In the modern day war reality, tanks cannot live for long without this kind of the special protection, and the main question is how to make the hangar tank with a turret that goes all around. Yeah, that's the main question, because here it's just the window for not more than 50 degrees. Yeah, we have more interesting news, but I want to make that kind of the video a little separate, so stand by for one more video. I'm gonna upload it in a few hours. And thank you, my friends, for supporting me on Patreon and also membership of the channel. If you want to support the job that I do here daily, please check out the link below where you may find my Patreon, or just click join here on membership. My friends, thank you for making my job possible. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.